I'm sitting here in a room that feels much larger than it used to. My name is Arthur, and if you're listening to this, I need you to do me a favor. Put down whatever is in your hands, stop scrolling, close the other tabs. I don't have a product to sell you, and I'm not looking for likes. What I am looking for is a moment of your time, because time is the one thing I've finally realized I can't negotiate with. My wife, Evelyn, is in the other room. We've been married for over 60 years, 6 decades. That's a lifetime by any metric. People see us at the grocery store holding hands, and they offer these polite, misty-eyed smiles. They think we're a miracle. They think we're the lucky ones who found a smooth path through the woods. But they weren't there in 1972 when the bags were packed. They weren't there in the 80s when the silence between us was so thick you could choke on it. I'm talking to you today because I'm looking at the finish line. When you get to my age, the horizon doesn't look like a vast sea anymore. It looks like a sunset. And as that sun dips lower, the shadows get longer, and you start to see the things you missed. I've realized that we didn't almost lose our marriage because of big things, infidelity, or some grand drama. We almost lost it because of 5 quiet, corrosive mistakes. If you are in a relationship, or if you hope to be in one, I am begging you, learn from my scars so you don't have to earn your own. For the first 20 years of our marriage, I was a high court judge, and I didn't even know it. I kept a mental ledger. I called it fairness, but in reality, it was a debt collection agency. I'd come home after a 12-hour shift, my back aching, and I'd think I provided the paycheck today. I mowed the lawn on Saturday. I fixed the leak in the upstairs bathroom. In my mind, I was up on points. So when Evelyn would look at me with tired eyes and ask if I could help bathe the children or dry the dishes, a wall would go up. I wouldn't always say no, but I'd do it with a sigh. I'd do it with a heavy footstep. I wanted her to know that I was doing her a favor. I was treating my marriage like a business transaction. I was making sure I wasn't being cheated. And Evelyn? She was doing the same thing. She was counting the hours of sleep she lost, the meals she planned, the emotional labor of keeping our family's world spinning. We were 2 people living under one roof, both convinced we were the one doing 60% of the work. That's the thing about 50-50. It's a lie. If you're aiming for 50-50, you're already failing. Marriage is about a total surrender of the score. There were years where Evelyn carried 90% because I was broken or lost. There were years where I carried 90% because she was ill. We wasted a quarter of a century measuring our sacrifices against each other. Do you know what happens when you spend your life looking for fairness? You stop looking for connection. You become roommates who are constantly auditing each other's performance. Stop counting the dishes. Stop weighing the burdens. If you love them, just pick up the towel and dry the glass. The ledger is a cage. Burn it before it burns you. This second mistake is one of the most arrogant things a human being can do, and yet we all do it. We fall in love with someone, and then we immediately try to fix the parts of them that don't fit our blueprint. Evelyn is a woman of rhythm. She needs a plan. She needs to know where the money is, where we're going for Christmas, and what the weather will be 3 days from now. Me? I'm a wanderer. I like the detour. I like the unplanned stop at a roadside diner. For 30 years, I tried to cure her of her anxiety. I'd tell her to just relax, which, as anyone in a marriage knows, is the most inflammatory thing you can possibly say to a stressed spouse. I thought if I pushed her hard enough, she'd become spontaneous. And she tried to organize me. She'd leave lists on the fridge, highlight the calendar in red ink, and get frustrated when I didn't follow the script. We spent decades fighting a war of attrition, trying to reshape each other's souls. It was exhausting. It made us both feel like we weren't enough. Every time I told her to loosen up, what she heard was, "I don't like who you are." Every time she told me to be more disciplined, what I heard was, "You are a failure." The shift only happened when I realized that her need for a plan wasn't a flaw. It was her way of caring for us. It was her love language. And my spontaneity wasn't a lack of responsibility. It was my way of keeping the light on in the room. We had to stop being architects, trying to remodel a house and start being guests in each other's lives. I don't try to change her anymore. I just make sure I'm there to hold the map while she draws the route. And she's learned to leave a little room in the margins for me to suggest a detour. Don't marry someone and then ask them to be someone else. It's a cruelty that masquerades as help. This is the one that almost ended us in the 90s. I call it the quiet explosion. I grew up in a house where we didn't make scenes. If you were upset, you swallowed it. You stayed polite. You kept the peace. So, when Evelyn would do something that hurt my feelings, or when I felt neglected, I'd tell myself it wasn't a big deal. Don't rock the boat, I'd say, but here is the truth about suppressed emotions. They don't die. They just go underground and ferment. They turn into resentment. I'd let 10 small things slide. The way she'd interrupt me, the way she'd forget to tell me about a social engagement, I'd say nothing. And then, the 11th thing, something tiny, like her forgetting to buy a specific brand of coffee, would happen, and I would lose my mind. I'd scream. I'd bring up things from 3 years ago. She'd look at me, terrified and confused, and say, "Arthur, it's just coffee." But it wasn't about the coffee. It was about the 3 years of silence that had finally reached its boiling point. We had to learn the hard way that peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of honesty. It is much, much better to have a 10-minute uncomfortable conversation today than a 3-day war 6 months from now. If it stings, say it. Don't say it with a weapon in your hand. Say it with a hand on their shoulder. "Hey, when you said that, it hurt." Or, "I'm feeling a bit lonely lately. It feels awkward. It feels vulnerable." But silence is a slow-acting poison. It's the nice couples who get divorced out of nowhere because they simply ran out of things to say after decades of swallowing the truth. There's a period in a long marriage, usually when the kids are growing and the career is demanding, where you become a logistics manager. You're not a couple. You're a domestic corporation. Who's picking up the dry cleaning? Did you pay the mortgage? Is the car making that noise again? We fell into this trap for nearly 15 years. We were fine. We never fought. We were a well-oiled machine. But we were also strangers. We stopped being curious about each other. I assumed I knew everything there was to know about Evelyn, so I stopped asking questions. I stopped looking at her, really looking at her, when she walked into the room. We were living on autopilot, assuming that the momentum of our history would carry us into the future. But love isn't a mountain you climb once and then sit at the top. Love is a garden. And if you stop watering it because you think it's rained enough in the past, the garden will die. It won't die overnight. It'll just slowly turn brown, the leaves will curl, and one day you'll look out the window and realize there's nothing left but dirt. We woke up when a pair of our closest friends, a couple we thought was bulletproof, split up after nearly 40 years. I asked the husband why. He said, "Arthur, we just stopped. We didn't hate each other. We just didn't matter to each other anymore." That terrified me. Evelyn and I had to learn to be intentional again. We started dating in our 60s. We started taking walks without our phones. I started asking her what she was dreaming about, not what she was doing, but what she was thinking. Your relationship cannot survive on leftovers. It needs the main course. It needs your attention, your eye contact, and your curiosity. Don't let your marriage become a piece of furniture that you eventually stop noticing. Finally, the biggest mistake of all, forgetting that you are on the same team. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But when you're in the heat of a disagreement, it's so easy to view your partner as the opposition. You want to win the argument. You want to prove you're right. You want them to admit they were wrong. There was a time when our youngest son was struggling. He was making some poor life choices, and the stress was tearing Evelyn and me apart. We had different philosophies on how to help him. Every night was a battle. I would attack her logic. She would attack my lack of empathy. We were standing in the kitchen one night shouting, and I saw her flinch. In that moment, I realized I was trying to defeat her. If I won the argument, what would the prize be? A crying wife? A broken partner? If one person in a marriage loses, the marriage loses. There is no such thing as an individual victory in a partnership. I had to learn to stop saying, "You did this," and start saying, "How do we solve this?" When you remember that you're wearing the same jersey, the nature of the conflict changes. It's no longer me versus you. It's us versus the problem. Whether it's money or kids or health or a forgotten chore, it's you and your partner side by side looking at the problem together. I'm 78 years old now. My hands shake a little when I pour my tea. Evelyn's hair is a beautiful, snowy white. I look back at those 60 years, and I don't think about the fairness of the chores. I don't think about the time she was too organized or I was too messy. I think about the time we've lost to those 5 mistakes. I think about the years we spent being right instead of being happy. If I could reach through this recording and grab the younger version of myself by the shoulders, I'd tell him, "Arthur, look at her. Really look at her. She isn't your opponent. She isn't your project. She is your witness. She is the only person on this entire planet who will remember the way you lived. Time is a predator. It takes your strength, it takes your friends, and eventually it takes your life. But it can't take a love that was lived intentionally. Don't wait until you're 70 to stop keeping score. Don't wait until you're 80 to start dating your spouse again." I see the comments on these videos sometimes, people asking for advice, people venting about their frustrations. My advice is this: be the one to drop the shield first. Be the one to say, "I'm sorry," even when you're only 10% wrong. Be the one to ask, "How are you, really?" We're going to do a video soon where we answer your specific questions. Evelyn will join me for that one. She's much smarter than I am, though she'd never admit it. If there's something you're struggling with, a mistake you're making, a fear you have, leave it in the comments. We don't have all the answers, but we have a lot of mileage. We won't be here forever. None of us will. But while the sun is still above the horizon, let's make sure we're not just existing next to each other. Let's make sure we're actually together. Thank you for listening to an old man's rambling. It means more than you know. If this helped you, maybe share it with someone you love. Subscribe if you want to hear more from this old heart. But mostly, just go into the other room, find your person, and tell them you're glad they're on your team. Do it now, before the clock strikes again.